Having the right tools for your garden can make all the difference in how much you enjoy working in your garden and also how well you can keep up with your garden. So starting with something just as simple as this watering wand, it took us a really long time to get ourselves a good watering wand. For a really long time, I just used my thumb on the end of a hose. It was really difficult to water things like tender young shoots or lettuce or anything that gets matted down easily. This one here, you can control the flow of the water. It can be gentle or it can be all out. It's very light.
We've got a garden up by the house and we've got the one down there that Michelle was just watering in. And I've seen Michelle drag hoses all over the place. She comes to me complaining that they're so tight together she can't get them apart. And I wanted to come up with a solution for her. So something that I got this year was these quick connect things. I had tried some different ones last year that did not work very well at all, but these things are amazing. This makes it a lot easier for Michelle with a bunch of different hoses to the different gardens. We've got trees out by the road that have to be watered, and the children can even use these things. The ones I had got before were really hard to push together. I think they were easier than unscrewing the hoses, but nothing compared to this. I'm still not quite satisfied with our watering system though. This right here drives me nuts. And often it's just out in the middle of the yard in the way, especially when you need to mow. Like this here, dragging this hose around and bringing it back up here. There's nowhere for it to go except on the ground. So I got something to take care of that I'm really excited about. It's a little nerdy, but I'm excited. To be clear, this has nothing to do with a sponsorship or anything. Nobody gave this to me. I've just gotten plain sick and tired of these hoses laying around, and I wanted to do something about it. So I finally went and got us a hose reel. That right there is pretty snazzy. Woohoo! Barely even use this thing and I'm already in love with it. I love things like that. So to be honest, gardening is not really my favorite thing in our homestead. I really love the animals and I help Michelle in the garden, but it's not my favorite thing. But I love making it more efficient and making it easier to keep on top of stuff. We had somebody come into our comments recently and say stuff about how all of our stuff just looks brand new and we must have tons of money and faking it and whatever. And I assure you that is not the case. We've been homesteading for 9 years now, and that is the very first hose reel that I've ever bought. We have actually not had very much money at all for our entire marriage, and each year we just kind of keep on building. We're very careful about how we spend our money, but especially me, when I see something that I know can make a big difference in making this homesteading life possible, I'm willing to invest in that to make so we can keep going and keep getting better and better at this.
Last year I only had 2 raised beds, and so I just made do with a long-handled hoe. But this year I have 10, and so I really wanted a tool that I could use in my raised beds that was a little more practical than a long-handled hoe. I got a Korean hand hoe. It's perfect for making furrows, like the point you can use to make furrows, and then this side right here you can use for weeding, and really anything. It took me a minute to kind of get the feel for this tool, but once I did, I really enjoy it. This is the bed that my cucumbers were in, and they have officially died. So as you guys can see, my cucumbers died. So I am going to plant some fall carrots in here. This is the beginning of August, and if they don't quite, get huge like my other carrots will, that's okay. We'll eat them fresh. It'll just make our others stretch a little bit further.
Carrots are very delicate, and so they just need the right conditions to come up. And putting these boards on top will help keep it cool and hold the moisture in. That'll really help them germinate a lot better.
I'm up here by the house right now, and I'm cleaning out this raised bed that I use for my greens. It's not been being used all summer while it's really hot. I just really don't put a lot of effort into growing greens when it's hot because we don't like bitter lettuce. So now that it is the beginning of August, I'm going to plant some lettuce in here. The really cool thing about this raised bed is that it gets the morning sunlight, but then in the afternoon it's shaded, and it's really perfect for lettuce. We will move on to the next tool as soon as I am done with this raised bed. This here is cilantro that I let go to seed. So here you can see all the coriander seed on here. I am just gonna pull these out and shake them over the raised bed. I'll throw compost over top of this and we'll have a nice crop of cilantro for this fall.
This is a 10 cube wheelbarrow. It gets pretty heavy, but it's got 2 wheels. The thing is though, is they're like $500 new, but I did not buy it new. I found this in a dumpster. I got it out of the dumpster and it was like all broken and stuff. I put new handles on it and fixed it all up. And this is compost for the raised beds over here. Composting is one thing that can tend to intimidate me a little bit, and I'm guessing it intimidates a lot of you as well. And the thing is, it's one of those things that it can be really simple. There's a really good way to do it where you figure it all out and you make sure you kill all the weed seeds and you get it really nice in, a couple of months or something like that. And there's another way to do it. You put things all on a pile and you let it sit for about 2 years. And it'll turn into compost. It's not perfect, but it works, and our garden gets better and better every year when we put this stuff on.
I must have misplaced my seeds when I planted this spring. I was just sure I had lettuce seeds left, and I guess I didn't. We usually get our seeds from Berlin Seed, but I didn't want to wait to get them in the mail. So I got these at Tractor Supply, and thankfully I got 3 packs because I thought I was being like very over prepared. They barely have anything in them and they were $3 each. So pathetic.
These are the grape plants that we planted early this spring, and it took them a little while to get established, but they just all of a sudden started going nuts. They should have definitely been like pruned and taken care of before now, but hey, better late than never, I guess. Basically what we're going for here is we want a single trunk going up, and then we'll also train it out onto these wires, and then that's where the grapes will eventually grow from. Before anybody goes down to the comments and tells me how I'm doing it all wrong and I should do it another way, let me just tell you, I looked a lot of places to try to figure out how to do this. I watched videos, I read articles from single people and from universities, looked everywhere, and it was really hard to find like one good solid answer. And so I'm going to kind of combine a lot of the things that I read and watched and try to use some common sense, because often in gardening, farming, homesteading, a little common sense can go a long way, and it might not end up being perfectly right, but usually it turns out okay in the end. Here's another tool that we wanted to show off. This is another simple thing, a scissors, but it's a really hefty scissors, and we use it for so many things in the garden, and it'll work great for something like this. Just cut right through that stuff. That felt painful. But what you're really wanting to do is you're wanting to grow a really solid trunk and a really good root system. And if it's growing all of these other branches, a lot of your energy is going to those other branches. So we want is the energy being going into this one single trunk. Another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave some of the leaves on, actually probably a lot of the leaves, so that it can keep doing its photosynthesis thing, and that'll bring in a lot of energy from the sun to help this thing grow. So this guy is really grown. This thing is like already about up to the top. Stuff like this is always a little bit of an adventure, and you just learn as you go, and that's okay. And I do appreciate help and advice from people that are qualified to give it and give it nicely. So if you want to, you can go ahead. The tool I'm going to use next is one that is going to be a little controversial, and I'm okay with that. We do use a tiller in our garden, and especially for something like this. Right here is what was our strawberry patch, and we planted a new one because if you want good berries, you have to replant the strawberries every 2 years or so. So we planted a new patch, and this needs to be tilled in, and then we're going to plant a cover crop here, and then we'll use this as garden space next year. I really don't know how we would manage this like we do without using a tiller. And I know there's a lot of advantages to doing a no-till method, but I think there's a lot of drawbacks as well, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But I mean, honestly, I see our soil getting better and better every year, and I feel like if it's used right and not used excessively, it can be okay, and it can be a good thing for your garden to use a tiller. This is not just terribly ideal to be tilling this right now because we've gotten rain fairly recently, but there's a chance of rain tonight and tomorrow, so we for sure want to get it done and get a cover crop in before that happens. I'm going to till this one more time going the other way, because when you go just one way, it'll kind of leave some strips sometimes and stuff. And sometimes that's okay, but this had some really thick grass and stuff. But before I do that, I want to try out my favorite garden tool. I actually bought it one time very early on when we were pretty broke, and it was one of those things, wasn't sure if we should do, but I went ahead and did it, and I'm so glad that we did. I don't really have any other place in our garden right now that needs to be weeded with this thing. That's usually more in the spring, but right now this is about how it would be. That is cutting right through the roots of that grass, right underneath the top of the soil, and just cutting it right off. And that's one of the things that we do to minimize the tilling that we do. Because while I do feel like tilling is okay and can be a good thing, I also think that doing it excessively is not good for your soil. And a couple things that we do to minimize that tilling is using things like a wheel hoe to get the weeds down, and also using lots and lots of mulch. What's on here right now is the weeding sweeps, and those do work really, really well to cut down those weeds. But this can do so much more than that. There's also a plow set. So you can put these things on here and they will make a big furrow. So you can use that to like plant potatoes. That works awesome. And then there's these cultivator teeth if you just want to rip up the ground. Honestly, I don't use these very often. They could be used, like just one of them, to make a small furrow. But usually we want our furrows a little bigger than that. And we actually have another wheel hoe. It's a different style. It's got a big wheel on it. That's got a really nice thing on the back of it to make the furrows that we do for planting our seeds. Those are the attachments that we've been using on our wheel hoe for the past number of years, and they work great. But I am really, really excited about something else that I just got. This was not sent to me. I bought this myself. I've been wanting to buy it for a long time, kept putting it off, but decided for this video, I wanted to compare this with what's on the wheel hoe right now and see which works better, so I can give you a better idea of what you might want for your garden. I honestly wasn't sure which I was more excited about, that hose reel over there or this thing here. Like a kid in a candy shop when it comes to getting a new tool to use. Wow. So the idea with a stirrup hoe is that you can cut through the dirt this way, and then when you pull back, this thing pivots and moves back and forth, and you just cut those weeds off. So I'm really, really curious to see how this does compared to the weeding sweeps that are on the wheel hoe. It's not going to be the greatest test right now, since this isn't actually the normal conditions that you would be using it in. This is like tilled up and all chunky with those grass clumps in there and stuff. But I think it'll be a pretty good test, and we'll definitely be testing this in the future when we do have actual places we need to weed, and we'll tell you how it works out. The one reason that I'm pretty excited about using the stirrup hoe is because you can see right here, there's kind of a gap in between these two sweeps, and that'll miss some weeds sometimes. And that stirrup hoe will go all the way across, so it's not going to miss anything. You can get this stirrup hoe in different sizes. I got the 12-inch one because I figured that'd be about the most useful for me. One of the advantages of the oscillating hoe is supposed to be that you can go back and forth, and when you cut the weeds off, then when you go back, it'll cut again, but it'll also like flip those weeds over. I can't wait to try this out in the spring when we're dealing with, you know, getting the garden started and weeding in between the rows and everything. If I was to go out and buy one or the other right now, I'm honestly not quite sure what I would get. I know this one's a little more expensive. I really like how it feels, and I think I would get the oscillating hoe, but I know that either one of them would work really well for most things.
So as you guys can probably hear in the background, Cody is out there tilling. We are running out of daylight. It's really cloudy today. And so I am going to dig potatoes while he finishes tilling out there. The tool that I would like to tell you guys about is a potato fork. This may not seem like a crazy transformational tool or anything, but for us, it was a huge like light bulb moment when we got a potato fork instead of using a pitchfork to dig potatoes. It makes the world of a difference in how easy it is to get the potatoes out of the ground. The other day we dug all of our Yukon Gold potatoes, and tonight we need to dig our red Pontiac potatoes. They're looking really super nice.
Now that this is all tilled up, it's really not too bad. Cover cropping is something that used to really intimidate me, thinking that you always had to have just the right perfect mix and you had to do it just right and everything. But really, the two main objectives when you're cover cropping is a green manure for your soil and also protection for your soil. And really, pretty much anything can do those two things. Weeds can be a good cover crop. The main thing is that you just wouldn't want to let certain plants go to seed. But as long as you've got a green cover on the ground and then you till it into the soil, that's a cover crop. Now, saying that, there are definitely different kinds of cover crops that will do different things for your soil. So if you've done a soil test and you know exactly what you need, you can plant certain things to get certain results. We're hoping to get a soil test done this fall, and then we'll be able to do a little more like that, figure out what exactly we need and what the best thing we can do for it. But this is definitely gonna be better than nothing. It's still gonna really help our soil, and it's gonna protect the soil from just being bare to the heavy rain and the hot sun. I'm gonna rake over the top of these seeds a little bit so they get in good contact with the soil. But before I do that, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our channel members. Thank you so much for the support you give to our channel and also for the input that you give us. We gave them several options as to which video we were going to do next, and this was one of the most popular ones, so that's why we did it now. And this video has been a lot of fun, so thanks for that. Now that that is all raked, we're ready to put a sprinkler on it because it really needs to be watered in so that it can get a really good start. We started out using the sprinklers that go around and around, and if you'll notice, our garden is square. This is an oscillating sprinkler. It goes back and forth. I mean, just kind of like people used to use a long time ago. But this one's pretty sweet because it's adjustable. You can adjust how wide it goes and you can adjust how far back and forth it goes. So it's super versatile, and it makes sure we can get the exact spot that we want to get in our garden. It used to be a nice, pretty blue, but it is definitely very well used. Ah! You could have turned the water off first.
It is sprinkling a little bit right now, but it's not going to be enough to make this cover crop as wet as I would like it to be. So we're going to set up the sprinkler anyways. Here's another one of my very favorite garden tools. I use this thing every single week in the summer and spring and fall. Today I'm going to be spraying Surround, which is kaolin clay. This coats the plants and makes so that they're not as tasty for the bugs. This is a fall planting of green beans that I did. And you can see here they look really beautiful on the top, but underneath you can see that the bugs were eating some of the leaves. I think it was cucumber beetles. And you can see they still have a bit of a white film on them, but the bugs moved on now and there's beautiful new growth coming on. So I'm just going to go ahead and spray these again this morning, coat them again with another round of the kaolin clay. I've been noticing that my sweet potatoes have some lacing happening on the top of the leaves. This is not anything I'm worried about. I'm gonna just go ahead and empty out my sprayer on these sweet potatoes. Kaolin clay is literally just that. It's a kind of clay, completely non-toxic. Cody came up with this idea a couple years ago to get a DeWalt sweeper to help with the bug problem, especially squash bugs. And it has really been a blessing. So if I'm honest, I have pretty much given up this year on the squash bugs. I'd been picking eggs and doing all the things, but I wanted to show you guys how this thing works. And like, this is absolutely disgusting. I can hardly even look at it, but I just want to show you the power of this tool. This sweeper obviously is really awesome when you actually have the really bad bug problem. But next year, I came up with this idea that I want some kind of lid that is an insect netting over our raised beds. And so Cody instantly had some really good ideas. So next year we are going to be netting all of our cucumbers and squash and everything like that. And hopefully that will take care of our massive problem with squash bugs.
Quick, they're running away. Gardening is such a big, broad topic, and it's so hard to fit a lot of the good stuff into one video. So we're putting together a playlist of some of our best gardening videos, and we'll put it right here for you to watch next. This thing is just so cool. Because we're more than farmers.